Today we're going to be talking about how to build and sustain high-performing teams. My name is Danny McKenzie. I am the Operations Jedi at Amazon. It's kind of fun being the only one with a job title inside the company. It makes it easy to find me.
Literally that title?
It is literally that title.
God, yes.
I work for Amazon Games. I am focused on, for the last 15 months, I have been focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, both within the Amazon Games teams, as well as starting to make outreach into the industry and into schools to try and make a difference. I use the pronouns she and her, and my background includes, I have worked at Apple, I have worked at Microsoft, I have worked at Amazon. Everybody keeps telling me I need to add Facebook and Google to the pentagram, but I don't think I'm going to go there. I've worked on everything from hardware to software to OS releases to game engines now, financial software, and a little bit on the game side. So it's kind of a hodgepodge of everything. So I can talk a lot of different technologies. I can talk a lot of different languages depending on what your interest is. And a lot of my time over the last mumble years has been actually spent fixing broken teams. One of the things that I found that I'm really good at is going into a team that is dysfunctional, assessing what the problems are, and turning it into a high-performing team. I've done this both locally. I've done this with teams in India when I wasn't allowed to travel because there wasn't budget to do it, so I had to do it over a video conference and teleconference. And I've done it when we've had multiple geographies in the United States. So there are some basic fundamental principles that I found have worked that I plan on sharing and hope they make sense and are helpful for you as well. Why you should listen to me? Because we're going to make it fun, and we're going to have a good time, and we're going to learn a little bit. And I'm going to ask you guys questions as well as to what problems you're seeing and what things you're having so we can have a good dialogue. Because it's not just what I know, it's what the room knows, because all of us have expertise and all of us have had these experiences that we can share and make a difference for everybody. So it's going to cover a range of best practices and tips and tricks. Some of the things may be a review, some may be new. Let's see if it's a little bit of both, and hopefully you'll get some grounding as to what's already working, and you should keep doing that and double down on it. And what are some new ideas that you can take back to your teams to help them be more effective? We'll talk about the traits for high-performing teams, case for diversity as part of being a high-performing team. Are you building or mending a team? Because there are two very different skill sets you need to bring to the table when you're doing those things. How empathy plays into being a high-performing team, and then we'll lead into a conversation where I want to have a dialogue with you. And there really is no silver bullet other than effort and intent, processes. We call them mechanisms at Amazon. It's where they're self-sustaining processes. These are the things we're trying to do to borrow from my Buddhist teachings, wise behavior, wise thought, wise action into practice, because that's what will help you lead teams moving forward. So the traits. You want to make sure you've got a collection of individual strengths. Don't have a team where everybody is good at the same thing. You're going to have gaps. You're not going to have diversity of perspective. You're not going to have diversity of problem solving. You're going to keep running into brick walls because you're not able to look around corners or assess the problem from a different perspective. Collaboration. The ability to work with your teammates is huge. I don't care how big a snowflake you are in the industry. If you can't work with others on your team, I don't want you on my team. You need to be able to work with each other. You need to be curious. At Amazon, we've got the leadership principle about learn and be curious. It's about the willingness to investigate, the willingness to ask questions, the willingness to just start, dumpster diving and see what you can find out, see what you can figure out, and bring that back to the team. It's a drive to achieve goals. If you're all aligned on what the mission statement is or what the goal is, you will start seeing synergy around everybody wanting to help each other and wanting to move forward to go achieve that goal. Part of that is knowing what your North Star is. What are the things that make up your North Star so when you come up against challenging questions and challenging decisions, you can literally ask yourself, is this going to drive us closer to our North Star or away from our North Star? And use that to keep honing your team and your team decisions back to that common goal and that common point forward that you want to go achieve. And then team tenets. Team tenets should include things like open and honest feedback, respect and trust, individual integrity, and that promises are kept. Along with this is communication. Part of this is effective communication in terms of written communication, email, Slack, Discord, whatever you're using to communicate between each other in the teams, as well as verbal communication. If you are looking at someone who brings a lot of sarcasm to the conversation, you're going to have a dysfunctional team. You look at someone who brings a lot of negativity into the room, you're going to have a dysfunctional team. You need to look at those behaviors within your team and find ways to change it. And I'll give a good example of this. When I moved into my current role about 15 months ago, I had come out of a team that was chaotic for a variety of reasons, and I had developed a really bad attitude. And I moved in my new role, and what I kept finding is I would be negatively sarcastic about something. I was, oh yeah, it's Monday again, right? That kind of stuff. And my manager walks in with what he calls attitude of gratitude. And it's like, this is a great start to the week, isn't it? And the more I kept hearing him just have that positivity day in, day out, no matter what was going on, I started realizing my attitude had been part of the problem in my old team. I'd forgotten some of the basic tenets that I teach everybody else when I do this. And by shifting my attitude, I was a lot happier in my job. The people around me were a lot happier to be around me, right? And I started seeing changes in the negotiations I was having with senior leadership around discussions around things we were going to do around, diversity and inclusion programs. So here's a case for diversity. And the reason why it's important as part of a high-performing team. Companies that have more racial and gender diversity have higher sales revenue, more customers, and greater profits. Something we all kind of like. Recent analysis of more than 20,000 firms in 91 countries found that if there were more female executives, they were generally more profitable than companies that did not. There's a 2011 study about management teams. The wider variety of educational and work backgrounds produced more innovative products. People came at the problem from different perspectives. Where I grew up, middle-class white kid in Cupertino, right? I've got a very privileged background in terms of at the time I was going to high school, it was one of the best high schools in the country. The community college I was at was top 5 community college in the country. I have advantages and attitudes and assumptions about how things should work and how things should be that somebody growing up in another part of the country or another part of the world won't have. You put the two of us together, we're going to produce a better product because we're going to challenge each other about our assumptions and what our backgrounds are and what the product should be to work for people who are like me or who are like them. And my favorite study, Dr. Catherine Phillips out of Chicago has done a 15-year double-blind study with thousands, over 10,000, something like that, participants in the study. 1 to 2 points of visible diversity in the room raises the IQ and EQ by 15 points. Some of the very interesting behaviors she sees is that when you have visible diversity in the room, you stop yourself, you think about what you're going to say, and you actually deliver a better argument to the rest of the room. You're more likely to be polite, respectful, and challenging of other people, and you're more likely to be, what's a good word that I want to use? Cynical is the wrong word. Be a little bit more hesitant to accept an idea immediately than if you're in a room full of people who look like you. So let's go on to building or mending. So if you are building a team and you get the chance to start from scratch. Look at the skill sets you need, and not just the technical skill sets of an artist or a dev or a producer, but look at the personality skill sets you're going to need. You're going to need somebody who's very entrepreneurial. You're going to need somebody who is very driven. You're going to need at least one person who is collaborative, and you're going to need at least somebody who likes stability and scale. Those are kind of the 4 puzzle pieces to fit together. Now, how many of each and whether or not people can adapt to more than one, I tend to be very entrepreneurial and very driven. Don't ask me to repeat a process twice, which when I was doing process engineering for 7 years, that was really interesting. Don't ask me to be highly collaborative. I'm all over the ADD autism spectrum. I don't deal with people well. I'd much prefer to be by myself in a hole somewhere else, just doing my stuff. But you partner me with somebody who is collaborative, and we pull together a great presentation to give to other people or to give to our leadership. Partner me with somebody who does scale well and who does stability well, and we will make magic happen when it comes to product delivery. Think about all the things you want to engage and drive within that particular project. If you've got everybody who is entrepreneurial and they're great idea people, and you don't have anybody who's driven, you're never going to get your game out the door, right? You're never going to get your tech for your game engine done because they're going to want to fiddle with it. Was it the art is never finished, it's only abandoned, right? Make sure you've got a bit of everything in your team. If you're mending a team, again, the kinds of things you're really going to be looking for are where are the problems and where are the gaps? And Carl gave some really good examples this morning. So watch his video when it comes out, if you weren't there this morning, around how to identify up front what kind of problems you might have. And you brought up a really good one that I hadn't thought about because it's been a lot of years since I've worked for a small startup. What happens if you have 2 people dating each other and they've broken up? How do you make that environment work? A big company like Amazon, one of us would just move to a different team and you'd never see him again. So it was something it was a good reminder for me to be considerate of when something like that happens within my team. How do I adapt? How do I help them adapt and move forward? The other things you see are personality types where I have been on teams where we've had a couple of people who were absolute senior experts in their field and didn't like acknowledging that anybody else could be right. You guys ever experienced that? Right? So you end up spending all of your time arguing with each other rather than getting the job done. So you need to identify where are those challenges, who are the people who are struggling to work with each other, why are they struggling to work with each other, and then as part of mending a broken team, you as a leader get to spend a lot of emotional labor fixing your team. That may include moving people on. That may include having some really hard heart-to-heart conversations about, is their attitude right? Do they need to shift their attitude? It may be role modeling best-in-class behavior like what my boss did for me. There are a number of techniques that you can use that can help you mend a team and get them out of storming and norming and get them into performing, if you're familiar with the sequence of storming, norming, performing. And again, as part of this, do a gap analysis of those team skills. Go back to those puzzle pieces. Go back to the team skills of what you need in terms of functional skills. Create a couple of matrices for yourself that map those out and see where you've got gaps. And I would suspect if you've got strong personalities, you're missing a collaborator who's going to be the one to build the bridges and connect the dots and help people work with each other. If you've got a lot of collaboration going on and you're not delivering, you probably need someone like me who's driven to deliver on time, time over time over time, because I get thrilled by hitting a deadline. That's what makes me happy. Empathy. one of the key things about empathy is if you bring that to the table and you teach your teams empathy, they're more likely to work with each other and they're more likely to be effective working with each other. You ensure alignment, you boost the productivity, fuels collaboration, blah, blah, blah. The easiest way I find to do this is no matter where you are in your life cycle, take a half day and go volunteer. I can guarantee if you take your team and go work a food kitchen, you will all come out different people. Make sandwiches, deliver them to people under the bridges. You will come out different people. Take a half day, go volunteer at a school that needs help cleaning classrooms, helping teachers set up stuff, or working with the kids to help them learn a concept. Your team will bond over that. It's kind of like going to boot camp, only not nearly as traumatic or difficult or long. It gives you the opportunity to learn about people who are in circumstances other than your own, and that you may find that you're like, oh my God, I didn't know this existed, right? And once you open the door to that empathy and you build on it, your team can become more empathetic to each other and to your customers and to your players, right? One of the things I've driven in my organization is literally a 6-fold increase in the number of volunteer activities we did last year to this year. And you see the difference in the teams. You hear it in the way people talk about they're much more open and engaging and taking that extra mile to go do an hour of code, to go spend time with kids at the school, or go do Habitat for Humanity. Those are some of the things we've done. Those are great team building exercises, and they serve the community as well as serving your team and you. And that's pretty much it. Those are the things that I have found work most effectively for me. And so what I'd really like to do is flip it over to you guys and find out, anybody else have any good tips or tricks we can add? Or do you have any problems that we'd like to chat about and see if there's some strategies we can give you to try? Yes, sir.
I had a question about something that you brought up at the beginning.
Yeah.
When you said that, making a good team, part of the list of potential criteria for that was individual strengths.
Yep.
In your experience, how do you avoid bottlenecks when so I work on an engineering team, and one of the individual strengths is database. And all the database work ends up going to that one person and they sort of get overloaded. How do you avoid that? And is there a benefit to cross-training people, do you find?
Oh, absolutely. How big is your team?
3 people.
Okay. So absolutely, especially in your case, you have to cross-train. You have to make a commitment to your people and your players that you will make sure everybody knows enough to get through the problem. Because what happens, give you a good example. A number of years ago, I was working for a large company on the West Coast, and someone from one of our subsidiary offices went on vacation, was on his motorcycle 3 states away, and literally got hit by a bus. Ended up in the hospital, spent 3 months in the hospital. He's fine now, but that's when we discovered he was the only one with the permissions to write access in production. So we actually had to make a phone call to his wife, and as soon as he was out of anesthetic enough, ask her to ask him for the password. Now, did we fix it? It is now documented. We made a lot of policy changes, yes. But the point that I took away and I continue to fall back on is you have to have cross-training. You have to have someone else who knows what you know. Because if you don't, you can never get sick. You can't take vacation. You're always on call, right? So within your schedule, you may not be able to handle it in this sprint or the next sprint, but talk to the team about how to create a plan for, you know what, I realize Sarah's not as good at database work as I am, but we're going to give her that task, and maybe it'll take 2 sprints to get done. I could have done it in 1 sprint, but that will make sure she's up to speed on it, or a little bit, and you rotate those around so you've got fungibility of skills to really help that. And they may be able to help you problem solve in ways that you hadn't thought about in terms of rotating the skill sets. Yeah. What else?
Jenny, you talked about team tenets. And
Yeah.
I was wondering if you can talk about what those team tenets are that you've seen in high-performing teams, but also if you think back at some of your teams that maybe weren't as high-performing as others, were there team tenets that actually were problematic in your experience?
Sure. So high-performing tenets include honesty, transparency, authentication. So in terms of, are you bringing your authentic work to self every day? Are you bringing the best you can every day? Individual integrity. If you say, I'm going to get this done by Friday, you get it done by Friday, or you tell the team why you can't. If you, it really comes down to how honest and open are you willing to be with your teammates. And the more honest and open you are with them, the more you enable earning trust with others. They should reciprocate, and that's kind of what helps create that high-performing environment, is where you all trust each other and know that, if Danny says she'll have it done by Friday, you can guarantee on that, so you can plan on that, so you can go do these 3 other things that also have to be done by Friday because they need to come together. That's where you want to be, and that's where you start getting synergy, and that's where you start getting help with, hey, I know how to do this thing better than you. How about if we switch tasks this time, because then it'll help us make the dates. You're more willing to give and take and help each other out with that. The biggest thing that I have found that is dysfunctional is when, well, there's I would lump it in 2. One is there isn't alignment of the mission statement or the goal statement or the North Star, however you categorize that thing. Not everybody agrees with it. They may not tell you that they disagree with it, but you can tell in their behavior because they're passive aggressive about it. If I don't believe that delivering on some of the commitments I've made to my manager around changing the culture within my organization and the outreach programs I've developed with universities and middle schools to help improve diversity in the pipeline for future engineering talent, right? I am failing on a commitment I made to him, and if I don't tell him, he'll trust me less when he finds out, right? Because it'll come back in the data, or it'll come back in terms of, well, you didn't deliver this hackathon, or you didn't deliver this other thing. Those are the kinds of things that will come out and bite you. Another dysfunctional thing is, so getting back to the mission statement, let's go back to that for a second. If there isn't alignment around that mission statement, take the time to find out why. If it's a small team, it may just be an hour meeting. For some of my teams, it could be a half day or a full day offsite where we dive into all the different parts of that mission statement, all the different components that roll up to what are we delivering, and find out why they don't believe in it. And this is where having earned trust with your team will come in handy. If you've earned trust, they're more likely to talk to you and tell you why it is. And if you don't get a good answer, then you know you haven't earned trust, and you need to go after earning trust first before you can have that other conversation. The other one is, it's more the traditional project management, time, money, resources. If you aren't good at estimating, if you aren't good at sizing projects, you're going to burn your people out, and they're going to hate you after a while, right? And that creates a negative attitude and a negative atmosphere that once people start bringing that, it's very easy to cascade into that sense of failure. And they will stop participating. They will stop being quite as productive. They'll leave earlier in the day. They won't do the extra effort. Those are the kinds of things where if you're looking for behavior patterns, look for people who aren't engaged, because it comes back to either burnout or they don't believe in the mission statement. That help? Good. What else? Yeah.
So you mentioned about senior members who have very strong opinions that they don't want to change. So I'm curious, other than having the tough talk or potentially letting that person go, what are some strategies
What I like to do is co-opt them. Get them to help build the solution, or, say, you know what, I know you don't like the answer I've come up with. Tell me what you think the right answer is. How do we get there from where we're at? And if you can get them to get skin in the game, then they care. Does that make sense? Okay, let me see if I can come up with a...
If they're offering a solution already.
Right. So if you've got person A and person B, right, and they're offering different solutions to the same problem, a real common technique is to whiteboard it and just do a pros and cons or a puts and takes column of person A has, these pros, these cons, person B has these pros and these cons, and pivot it to the data, not the personality. So you can say, here are the risks associated with this approach. Notice I didn't say Joe's approach or Sarah's approach or whoever, right? This approach has these benefits and these risks. This approach has these benefits and these risks. If we take approach A, how do we mitigate the risks that we've identified? Conversely, if we take approach B, how do we mitigate those risks so that we can succeed? Which one's got a better timeline? Which one is more comprehensive? Which one has fewer risks, or the risks are less severe if they happen? And if you can dive into that piece, then you can start getting them to debate about the solution and debate about the data, and it tends to get away from the personalities. Does that help? Are there any other suggestions? And has anybody else worked with really hard personalities? What works? I saw a lot of heads nodding, so somebody has either been successful or you're all failing at working with snowflakes.
I think I give a lot of space.
Yeah.
I think I give a lot of space to difficult personalities as a manager. So if that person is in my chain, they generally are difficult because it's not. I've found that most of the time it's not personality; it's actually frustration in some space. They don't feel like they have a voice. They don't feel like they have agency, even if they feel like they do have some form of voice. They're disengaged.
Right.
We in games we say like toxic personality, right?
Yeah.
Giving them more space to just talk, and I think I generally tended to mentor those people rather than coach them, and so it's a very conscious decision to stop mentoring different personalities and start coaching them. So really giving them the space to show their behavior and to talk through how you can help as a coach and less of a mentor.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say right behind Jen. Yeah.
I was just going to bring up that I think your plan of whiteboarding it is certainly good. I've also found that, especially working upwards, and it is very situational, I find that trust a lot of times is in there, and respect a lot of times is in there.
Yeah.
And we also have the dynamic of personality type A doesn't communicate well with personality type C, and so you need to find someone as a mediator. And so I generally will find someone who I believe that person will hear. They may just not be listening because of that personality issue or
Right.
what other, maybe their ego is so large that they do believe they're the only one that's right. But sometimes it is the matter, and that's why I like your whiteboard approach of just letting them hear the data, or hear
Right.
the value of this other idea, as opposed to tuning it out because Mark said.
Right. And this is where if you've got a collaborator on your team, that may be the right person to do that negotiation. And if you are having problems with the personalities, maybe you need to see if you're missing a collaborator. And if you don't have the headcount to hire somebody to be that connector, who on the team can develop those skills, right? I was actually in an interesting conversation with my manager yesterday about when you say anything, there's a cause and effect to anything you say. What is the impact and intent of what do you want to say? And what objectives would help you best get to that goal? And in this case, it was a conversation about, do I keep being accommodating and doing the emotional labor for some folks who are struggling with some concepts around diversity? Or do I come back with a harsh message of, this is what it's like in this situation, and you guys have to learn to be open to it. And we had a really good conversation around when is it good to be accommodating and when is it good to be harsh? Because there's not only different learning styles, but people are in different places. You don't know who is dealing with a family emergency outside of work or any of those kind of things that might interfere with their ability to hear or be present in the moment. Did that help give you a couple of suggestions? Okay, good. Yeah.
I'll add to that oftentimes the difficulty can actually be about hidden agendas that people bring to the table when the team is trying ostensibly to solve one problem, but those difficult personality types have an additional problem or feature that they're trying to kind of insert into that conversation. So trying to come at them with an approach of understanding and trying to kind of dig out what that hidden agenda may be often helps to kind of get alignment there.
Asking a lot of, help me understand, right? I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into this question. There's something here I'm not quite getting about what you're saying. Help teach me. Most people were egotistical enough that when somebody else says, oh, sensei, I want to learn something, it's an ego boo, right? We will want to pontificate. So give them, to Chelsea's point, give them that space to share their knowledge and then just start drawing them out. We call it asking the 5 whys. Keep asking those questions. Keep asking a little bit more and tease out a little bit more and tease out a little bit more. Because if you do find a hidden agenda, you can say, oh, you know what? That needs to go in the next sprint for these reasons, but it's on the list. It's top of the backlog now, so we won't miss it. We won't forget it. Or you're right. We missed a part of what needs to be in this feature for the next release. Means changing the estimate. It may mean shifting the sprint end date, whatever needs to happen for the team to get it done. But that way they are acknowledged, they are heard, they feel valued for their opinion and the knowledge that you've hired them to bring to the table. Who else? Yeah.
I had a question earlier in your talk. You mentioned a little bit about spectrum. I actually work for a nonprofit studio who provide game development and technical training for adults on the autism spectrum. Do you have any advice or tips for how to integrate? I know everyone's different, but general experience either integrating people with neuro differences in the workplace or how that works for you?
What works for me is recognizing what works for someone, right? So in my case, I don't do with a lot of noise or sensory impact, and we're in low cubicle, open bay seating. So I've been told, I don't care where you do your job as long as you get your job done. Sometimes my job is negotiating with people, so I have to be off, talking with them. Sometimes I can work from home. Sometimes it's just going down to the kitchen because it may be quieter because, folks don't head into the kitchen. Understand what helps them be successful. And actually, in another talk that I give, I actually reference a video that Google has done around unconscious bias. And if you go out and watch it, one of the things they talk about is there's somebody who's on the autism spectrum who is interviewed as a part of this video. And he talks about the first year he was at Google when he went through performance review, they asked him to list 5 of his strengths. How empowering is that for somebody who is often derided or punished for being different to focus on what makes them good, what makes them a superhero, what makes them the best of the best at what they do? That's often very empowering, is flipping the conversation for them. What else? Yeah, Teddy. How often are they willing to talk to me on in my case, Chime or Slack or Discord? How often do they let a one-on-one slide? How often are they resorting to impersonal means of communication, so email or posting docs to Google Docs or, whatever is the appropriate, SharePoint or whatever, how are they starting to become indirect or disenfranchised from you? The first time I start seeing that, that's when I will do an outreach. And if I can, I will actually fly out there and visit them. Because sometimes they just need a little love and attention. Part of the reason why I'm here in Austin is we have a team in Austin, and I haven't been out here for a long while. So I spent the day yesterday with a lot of my teammates just chatting, sitting in the bay, just having conversations to reconnect and let them know that somebody in Seattle cared. But yeah, it's looking for those little things about where are they disengaging and just catching them early. What else? Yeah.
During the interview process, do you have any recommendations on how to uncover the personality traits of people that
Oh, yeah. Go look up what's called the STAR model, which is a good behavior interview technique. And that really focuses on how do people react in various situations. So a standard question I might ask might be something along the lines of, tell me about a time where you made a commitment and you realized you're going to miss it. What did you do? And so I'm looking for, did they clearly communicate it? Did they apologize if apology was necessary, right? Did they provide a new commitment with a new estimate? Did they say what were they going to do to reconcile that? So what I'm looking for is what's their problem-solving capability, what's their empathy, and what's their commitment to a delivery that they said they were going to make. And so, again, look for those and then compare it back to, are they collaborative, are they entrepreneurial, are they a driver, or are they somebody who wants scale and stability? You'll hear those answers come out in behavioral interviewing. Yeah, what else? Yeah.
Converse to actually his question, as you were talking about the beginning part of the dysfunction, I guess my question is, you put it bluntly, where do you draw the line between, I've tried to handhold you, coach you enough, and it's like, get the hell out.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line?
It's different for everyone. And I will tell you, it's also very different being a female manager versus what I hear male managers go through. Generally, women are a lot more accommodating of bad behavior than men are. But for each individual, you have to look at, I said generally, it's not, there's spectrums on both sides, right? The thing to look at is from an objective measure, if you can bring it back to data. Are they hitting their deadlines? Are they missing their deadlines? Are they causing other people to be disenfranchised? Are they causing the team to question, is the goal or mission statement correct? Are they causing the team to negatively question estimates? If they're doing all of that, it's time to move them on, right? If they're doing some of that, could be you need to change your coaching style if you want to invest in them. It may be finding somebody else to be a coach for them, right? Because it may be they don't listen to you because your communication style doesn't resonate with them. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I need to watch somebody doing something to learn it. So I am much more effective when I can see my boss handle a difficult situation, because I'll go, oh, those are the triggers I'm looking for. That's what I'm going to store away. So I learn more from that than I do from him lecturing me about what I did right or did wrong at some point. Not that he does that, but it may be that you need to think about, are they a verbal learner? Are they an auditory learner? Are they I can't remember what reading. It's a type of visual learning or kinesthetic learning. What's their mechanism for hearing you? And that you may have to adapt your communication style so they will hear you. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't think it's all about that. I mean, to me, hiring the right people, putting them in the right spot. If I fail as an employer, I take 51% of that failure. And it's an expensive process to train somebody, get them to fit in 3 to 6 months, plus the search.
Yep.
3-year commitment, and you're going to go through that cycle again. So I think along with that triage you're doing with them, I think there's a lot of self-reflection. Did I give them the resources? Was it clear?
Very
Did I
good.
do what they need to succeed? And are they in the right spot?
Yeah.
Maybe they miscommunicated, maybe I misheard. I thought they could do data management, but they can't,
Right.
right? They're better at combat. They're better at what have you, but I've got them doing data. And that's a bad spot.
Yep.
Maybe there's a way to salvage that person, which I think has cultural benefits throughout.
Yeah.
If they see me making the attempt to improve that situation for the team by improving that individual, I've also saved money, for the company and promoted the culture that you don't have to worry if you're fucking up. We're going to help you succeed. Open your mouth, raise your hand. We'll help you get there.
And that's part of that earning trust. I think where I was assuming is that you had gotten past earned trust into failed trust. And you were looking for, is it worth trying to re-earn trust, or were you at the point of no return, which is what I took out of your question. But you're right. I mean, I will now say that I'm in the best job of my life and I have the best manager in my life because my mission statement lines up with my skills and my passion. The last job I was in, I was okay, but I was not engaged. I was not fully in the role, fully present every day because I was bored with it. And luckily, the manager I had at the time saw that and put me up for this other role because this one's meaty enough to keep me interested and keep me challenged, right? ADD, interest-based attention span. If I like it, I'll dive into it and learn everything about it. If I'm not interested in it, forget it. You cannot get me to learn it, no matter how much you pay me, right? No matter how much you beat me up verbally. Understanding those behaviors about your people is huge about setting them up for success. Yeah. Yeah. What next? This is good so far. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of what we talked about was kind of managing down, like talking to your team and dealing with your team. I think a lot of us find ourselves in circumstances in which we have a good relationship with our team, but there may be management of us that can provide some deadly solar radiation that we find ourselves, trying to protect our team from. In my circumstance, I work in a movie studio, so there are all kinds of executive dive bombs on our projects. A lot of like, oh, my kid plays Fortnite, should be more of Fortnite. And so what are your sort of tips and strategies for kind of being the middleman between your team and perhaps a larger organization?
Good question. Some of it is creating and thinking about the questions you can have in the back of your head so you can ask them when those things pop up. So for example, hey, my kid needs a summer project. It's like, our mission statement is X. You've bought into that mission statement. Probably not the right time to have an intern come in and disrupt that. Right? If you want this is a great sales technique. Never say no to a customer. It's always, here's the cost. Happy to do it. Here's the impact to the schedule. Would love to take that on. These 3 things now have to drop below the line because the estimate for that is so big. So you put it back on them that they can get it if they want it, but there's a cost to it. The other thing is when it's not busy and when it's not, if you can find a time where it's relatively calm, have a conversation with them around the cost of the disruption, the cost of productivity, the cost to the team in terms of team building, the cost in trust. And if you can share with them examples, going back to the interview model of behavior modeling, point out to them, this behavior did this and had this result to the team. This resulted in this, which led to that. If you can if you can breadcrumb it so they can start seeing how their behavior is actually negatively impacting the thing they want, you can usually help pull them around. It's not 100% successful, but if you can get it 50% or 80%, that's still a heck of a lot better than where you were 2 months ago, right? But that's what I would try is really get them to buy into the solution by helping them understand the cost. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
We battle with not having teams located in the same location.
Yes, we do.
And Sarah and I live 3 hours by plane. We're trying to collaboratively manage a group, but the biggest hurdle is the team having a cohesive identity, right? Not one location versus another, or whatever. We're all trying to achieve the same goals. How can we foster high performance when there's so little face time, which generally tends to have a ton of plus to trust?
So, because I know some of the players on that particular set of teams, we have some play tests coming up. The obvious thing would be to say Seattle versus Austin. What I would actually propose is split the teams up so there's some from each on the other team. So you've got a team that consists half of one location, half of the other location, against people who are also roughly 50-50. So you've got teams that have to work with each other. One of the other things we did last year that was absolutely hysterical is we did a competition between our various sites to use sticky notes to create pixel art. It's still up. A year later, we still have got some amazing pixel art up on the walls in all of the buildings, because just this camaraderie of challenging each location to, can you top the Mario? Can you top the Koopa? Can you top the, all the things that people built? And then when you go to visit, you can comment on it and say, you guys did really good here. This is really awesome. But to me, really, it's how much can you guys share each other? Can you have a direct report in Seattle? Can you have some direct reports down here and flip it to force some of the negotiation, collaboration, discussion, and get that team building to happen organically, because now suddenly they have to be invested in each other. Yeah, Jen?
There are 2 things that I've done in that situation as well. So I was managing a team, half of whom were located in the office, the other half of whom worked from their homes around the country. And for our holiday party, I declared it a mandatory work from home day, where you had to wear festive attire of some sort, preferably the crazier the sweater, the better. And we actually all called in a big web conference. We did essentially a share your favorite holiday recipe, share your, tell a story about your sweater, match the person's favorite, holiday gift or favorite holiday movie with the person. But because we forced everybody to be at home, it took away the in the office versus the away, and it also really created a lot of empathy around for the people who are always trying to interact with each other while remote, because that's really, really hard. And that was a really good way that we did to break down barriers. Another thing that I did, I had to create a very specific bonus plan to incentivize collaborative behavior. And this was for a company that had multiple studios. And there was a lot of feeling amongst the studios that, no, we only want to be bonused on our product.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be bonused on what they're doing. I definitely don't want them to be bonused on what I'm doing, because they're afraid of losing out on some sort of perception of what was fair. But that was exactly the opposite of the behavior we wanted to incentivize. And so instead I said, okay, from the perspective of the behavior we want to see and the outcome that we want to see, what is it? We want somebody where if we say, Chelsea, we need an amazing gameplay programmer to work on this program, this project for 3 months, that there would be no hesitation about, yes, I will do it. Where do you need me? Because I know this is important. We wanted people to say, oh, hey, I was playing this game the other studio was doing yesterday at lunch, and I think it's awesome. Here's some feedback, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so instead we said, sorry, studio heads, I know you feel differently, but we're making this decision. Here's why. And at the end of the day, there's some small amount of the bonus that is set aside for star performers, not tied to any specific project, but it gave managers the flexibility to recognize exceptional performance. And then for the rest of it, everybody is bonused on the company's revenue that year. Because at the end of the day, if you build one successful project, your next project has increased odds of success, no matter what.
Right.
We wanted to really stress that in a very comfortable way.
Yeah, and that's where, if you're not hearing about the play tests that other teams are doing, let me know. We'll make sure you guys get in the loop, because those are some of the simple things that you can do to really get people to know each other, right? Collaborating over chat to go kill something is one of the,
It's true.
right? Just saying. What else? We've got 10 minutes left. So,
So working at several different game studios, I know that everybody can relate to having employees at summer contractors full time. So how do you help to build morale? And I think this reminded me because of the holiday party comment. How do you build morale when things are so separated at times? I think it brought up a lot. How do you kind of address that with your team in a way that, is not just suck it up, which is how it is?
well, we have a lawyer in the room. Oh, wait, wrong lawyer. No, this is it's a really hard question, because especially for a company like ours, we are under a lot of obligations as a large employer to adhere to laws and regulations that only apply to large businesses. And so there are times where we have to maintain, the case law that just happened in California. You have to have clear delineation between who is an employer and who is a contractor. And I'm actually going to give an answer you're probably not going to like, which is you have to be very clear about what is employee work and what is being outsourced. And honestly, you have to treat your outsourcers differently. And I realize that it goes contrary to games, and it goes contrary to the culture, and it means adopting attitudes that are a little bit more prevalent in the rest of high tech. But you really have to balance the needs of the company and laws that you are required to adhere to with the team need. Within that, the things that you can do is it's still okay to go to lunch together. It's still okay to go play miniature golf after work. It's still okay to go do a lot of those things as long as it's personal time, not work time. And I think that's where I would draw the line is really being clear about differentiating the work from the people. But otherwise, I would, that's a question that really has to go back to, in our case, our legal and HR reps for a better answer than what I can give. For a small company where the rules don't apply, or they don't apply as difficultly, there are other options, I bet. Yeah, Teddy?
That is sometimes people prefer the classification, and I have that conversation and say, okay, they're an intern now they're an employee. Everybody is like that. Or they were an employee, now they're losing their contract. So different laws, communication, result, right? It's weird, it's different, it feels awkward sometimes, but when everybody kind of understands the perspective and then wants to go for it.
Yeah.
Teddy, can you share a little bit about the law that requires that and those risks of not following that law?
So I'm not an employment attorney, so I don't want to necessarily speak to that in my legal advice in that context, but I do know that your classification and how you pay and compensate and provide benefits to those people changes based upon your behaviors and the way it's done.
Yeah. There's.
If you run afoul of what the internet is very expensive.
My understanding is there's a set of 20 questions the IRS will ask a company, and you can answer one question wrong or all 20 questions wrong, and somewhere in there is where the IRS will decide it's an employee, not a contractor. And so that's really where an employment lawyer is really your best bet, along with your HR, to navigate those situations. Yeah, and make sure both the contractors and the employees and the company are all taken care of.
issue there is that often companies will have contractors who are doing work that should be done by full-time employees. And so this is actually one of the things that the IRS uses to make sure that companies are not taking advantage of people who should be full-time employees, but who are actually who are classified as contractors to serve the company money. So, it is something where you can find those 20 questions, and it's something where if you as a manager feel like you have an employee where those lines are blurred, you should take that to your HR team. If you don't have the HR team, take it to your CEO, because the IRS is very, very expensive very quickly.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, not only is it less expensive to do the right thing in terms of classification, it's also the right thing to do in terms of classification.
Right. What else? We've got time probably for one more question. Who wants to be last? Yes, sir.
Is there anything you found particularly effective on a hiring front towards attracting and finding diverse talent? Let's say you built the case for the business value of having a diverse team. How do you actually go and find people?
A lot of hard work. So some of the things you can't do, right? You cannot make assumptions based on someone's last name. You cannot make assumptions based on their first name. You cannot make assumptions based on where they went to school. However, what you can do is knowing, for example, HBCUs, which are historically black colleges and universities, or HSIs, which are Hispanic serving institutions. You over-index reaching out to those schools. Although I will say that Texas A&M and University of Michigan have the highest populations, I believe, of black CS majors in the United States. So understand where your talent is and then go after it. Some of the things we do differently, we will, as Jen knows, we invested in IGDA scholars and the Women Ambassadors program this year at GDC. We have recruited at Game Devs of Color in New York, which is an amazing small conference if you guys haven't been there. We did Lesbians Who Tech Plus Allies. We're doing Blacks in Tech in October. There's a dozen or more different conferences that, depending on the skills you're looking for, may be a good fit for you to consider. The other thing is consider people who are not necessarily from a games background, but are games passionate. So how I ended up in working in Amazon Games is there's a product manager who went through one of our internal forums that was called Video Game Interest, and then compared everybody on the list to their job title. And then I got this random email that says, hey, you're a TPM and you like video games. Could we go out for coffee? So I got talked into moving over to the game team because he did an outreach and found somebody who had that intersection of interest of being a TPM and loving video games, and the fact that I was female just happened to be a bonus. Yeah.
Bouncing off this question is nothing against Amazon, but how do you give any quick actionable tips for small teams that don't have the resources to lobby Michigan, lobby Texas A&M, and go to all of these vast different conferences to find everything?
Yep. I would do a couple of things. I would identify one or two that you want to invest in. So it took me, a couple of hours of Googling to come up with 30 or 40 different conferences across the U.S. that had some kind of intersection between diversity and games or diversity and high tech. Invest that couple of hours, look at those things and say, oh, you know what? This one's local in a couple of months. Let me try that one because it's a low investment, right? It's an afternoon. Outside of that, I would leverage your network. So either LinkedIn, Facebook, do outreach to everyone you know and let them know you're looking for talent who has these skills. And then make sure they know that you're very open to, you're looking for a broad spectrum of talent, and then start pulling from that. I think if you do really working through some of the groups that are on Facebook that do high-tech hiring. If you look through communities like IGDA, I can never get those in the right order. I think those are good places to start, especially for a really small company, because you will make contacts who know contacts, right? On LinkedIn, I accept everybody who sends an invite to me, because I figure the bigger my network is, the bigger I can help others. And so then if you do a search on my network, you're likely to find 5 or 6 or 8 people who fit your criteria, just because I've got a network of, I don't know, 1,000 or 1,200 at this point, something like that.
So we have Blacks in Games, Women in Games, Jewish game developers, Latinx game developers, Muslim game developers, and allied special interest groups. So it's really easy to send an email saying, hey, we have these 10 jobs, or even one open job. We'd love to increase our team's diversity. Would you share this with your audience? Also LGBTQ+ developers. And then in addition to that, for those of you who would like to hire more women particularly, Tara Brannigan runs a Women in Games jobs group on Facebook that is an amazing source of talent that identifies female.
Yep.
There's also a Women in Non-Binary People in Games group that is a super resource. So they're out there even for small companies. If you can set aside an hour or two for people, start with the 6 that I mentioned. Everybody's been super helpful and supportive. And they will just ask Carl to post it in Blacks in Games, and suddenly you're going to have 1,000 people of color seeing your post. You will eventually post as well.
Cool. Well, we've now run a minute over, so thank you all. You did an excellent job.